Now we're sitting in the car with the harness and we've got it very roughly laid out to where it's gonna be. And that side doesn't matter, so that's why you can't see it right now. But what you need to see is all of this right here. This is all the stuff that needs to go on that side. So the only thing on the passenger side that's gonna go through the firewall at this time is this little bit of headlight harness and other accessories right here. So whatever was over there, we're just putting it all back through. The plan is to run it on the inside of the fender. That's why our fenders are taken off. But right now we just need to get it through the hole in the firewall. So that's where we're headed. Hopefully that was pretty easy to see. We went right through this hole that was already here, and we brought it through on this side. Now this is kind of like how, you know, we used to wire tuck Hondas back in the day, except it was a little cleaner because we drill a hole here with like a hole saw somewhere in there that was hidden from the engine bay. Now I don't care because we're gonna put a catch can here, and you're never gonna see this. And then on that side, we have the booster and the clutch master and all that stuff. And so I am gonna put something similar to what I put here on our charge pipe holes to keep this from damaging any wire. And of course, we're gonna loom this. But right now, we just wanna see where everything's gonna land, because as you can tell, this is gonna be way too short to reach pretty much everything it needs to reach. But this is basically what we're doing on both sides, right? We're just running across and coming back over and then making things meet. Now, when we get to the ECU wires and they all have to go from there back over to here, that's when it's gonna get stressful, but it's not bad. So let's just keep on trying. So back on the inside, we've got our ECU wires here. We don't want to confuse those. This is the chassis harness that we just plumbed through there. You can see we got it going through that hole. And then these wires right here are the wires that used to be inside. As you can see, this grommet here was the one that passed through that. So all these are a little bit long, but these are where they live for the most part. So they're all going to go there. So that's fine. We don't have to touch any of those. This fuse box, no clue where it's going to go, of course. This wire is, I think, to the alternator. That's correct. And then this is positive in. So right now we're just gonna let that chill because I'm not exactly sure where we're gonna put it. Now this loom right here is what used to be on the firewall. As you can see, it's got a little bit of length in it, a lot more than we need. For this next section of harness, I was able to move it behind these two bars right here. You can get a better idea of how I plan to route it. So this is mostly gonna sit like this, right underneath here, and I wanna give it enough slack to go below this vent here, our AC vent, and then also not have too much tension on it over here. So what I did was figured out how much of it I want to come through. Basically, I don't want this to move, right? I have this where I want it. You can see there's a bunch more wires. Try to zoom in there. Right past that opening, and I don't want to have any problems with like trying to close this hole up, because obviously we're not going to leave it this large. So what I did is I zip tied right there, and this zip tie is just going to hold everything in place so I don't have to constantly check my wire length on this side. Once this piece is zip tied in place, we're just going to keep moving along. We're going to pull it over here to the side like this, and then route it through our firewall and check out our pedal clearance, brake, clutch, throttle, all that good stuff. All right, we're through. Now the time comes where we have to figure out exactly what we want and where we want it. So these things right here need to go in the bay. This is like wiper motor, and this right here is the little alarm chirp guy that normally sits inside the fender area. So it's pretty well hidden so people can't cut it. And then over here, you can see we got all of our wires coming through. It looks a little insane, it's okay. And all of these need to go up to the front. These are like headlight plugs, horn plugs. Honestly, not completely sure. I just know they all go to the front. All of these have to go to our passenger floorboard now. The plan for each wire here is that we're going to mark each one with a piece of tape with a letter or a number to signify what it goes to. So for example, if we took this wire right here and we cut it in half, we would put A1 on one side and A1 on the other side, and then we know that A1 needs to be reconnected. So whether we solder an extension to it or we cut length out of it and resolder it, we know that A1 needs to be joined with A1 and A1 alone. First thing I want to do is relocate these ECU plugs to the inside. So I've started, you can see I got a couple little tags on them. And then I have a ton of little tape pieces just kind of stuck everywhere. This isn't enough by any means, but it's enough to get me going so I don't have to cut a piece of tape each time. I just reach over and grab it, put it on the wire, I chop the wire, and I move on. Now there are, I think, 80 wires in this bundle here. It's kind of insane. And some of them are going to go to these plugs, some of them are going to go inside. So it's important to keep a reference or a note on where each one comes from, or try to remember in some way so that you can easily go back through this. One thing that is a good idea is that you can see these are kind of staggered the way I cut them. Not all of them, but they're just kind of jumping around, and they're all going to continue to be that way. And that's so that when you solder everything, you don't have 80 chunks of heat shrink and solder all in one spot. You know what I mean? Because that's just going to be a really fat bundle. It makes it harder to put places or to conceal, and it's just not good practice. So if you stagger them a little bit, it makes it a little bit harder to build your extension, but it makes it a lot easier to package everything underneath the dash. Well, that part is done. We got a ton of wires here, all with their respective locations written on them. And then these are all the ECU wires that have to go back. So you can see there's quite a few wires. But look how much it thins out this harness. It's honestly about half the wiring, which is great. Now we're gonna take this and try to fish it back through, and then we can kind of work our way back over that direction. We got this big loom pulled back through. And now I'm gonna take off this tape. I'm gonna fish each one through so they're not so caught up in this rat's nest here, and it should look a little bit better. So now I jumped over to this side after I got that side relatively organized. I took all the wires that were kind of in one grouping and laid them out that way. And then all the other ones I laid out over here, kind of near the passenger side seat. And then I proceeded to run them through this way and route them all the way through. And now I have them all right here. After a few more minutes of organizing things, you can see it looks quite a bit nicer. Now we're gonna move to that side and we're gonna take all those wires you can see running across, over there. We're gonna pull them through and get them laying in this general vicinity here. Here's one. We have 30 something to go. I'll clock back in with you guys once we get a little closer. We got all of our new wires on this side now. They're just hanging outside the door. We're back on the driver's side front now. And all of our other wires are coming through here, and these are all gonna get extended. I'm gonna live up here. I'm gonna cross this just like the other side over there we set up and go to our headlight. Now what I did off camera is I cut all of our connectors off in various places after figuring it all out, or at least making a mental note of where it all needs to go. And then I plugged them into the back of our headlights. So of course they're gonna pull down. The wiring will come down like so and go underneath the light, so you won't see any of it from the top, or at least very little of it from the top. Should look pretty clean. That's kind of the goal. Quick little recap of this clusterfuck. We've got all the wires that were on this side are now sorted, soldered, connected, everything's dialed. We got all these left. We got a couple more right here, and we've got some other loose ones down here. Now I have a way to do all this where it looks quite a bit better. Something like this, and then this will be up here, and I'll show you it when it's done. I promise it doesn't look as crazy as it does right now. So I went ahead and started on my wire grouping, and so I got these little P-clamps, and I'm just using riv nuts and getting everything in position. So you can see we have these two here. This is nice and just loosely chilling for now because it's gonna probably need to be slightly adjusted. And then up front here, I've got all of our headlight wiring somewhat organized cleanly on the back of the headlight, and then all fully extended and hanging out underneath here and ready to go. While I was doing this just showed up in the mail. This is a Pulsar 6262G, so it's basically like a Garrett G35-900 copy. It's got the billet wheel, it's got the T51R machined ring in it for all the cool sounds, and this is a T4.82 undivided exhaust housing with a 3-inch V-band outlet. Now the reason I got this is because I keep thinking that this turbo setup on here is just gonna be way too laggy. I think it looks sick, you know, with the black cover and everything. I spent a bunch of time on it, but I don't wanna pay to get it tuned twice and then regret not swapping to a smaller, more responsive turbo, you know, early on and then wasting $1,000 on tuning. So we are gonna swap it, which means our charge pipe is gonna change, our down pipe is gonna change, and then of course our intake will probably still fit. I might actually be able to run a true 45-degree intake tube now because of the changes. Not really sure. But the benefit is I'll be able to sell this turbo before it's ever been run, so it's still brand new technically, and I have 2 hot sides for it. Oh, and I got a carbon plug cover. I don't know if I showed you guys this. This looks pretty sick. It's just sitting on here because I still gotta clean the motor and everything, all this dust, but finish looks really good. It's $200 on eBay. So anyway, I'm gonna take a break from the wiring, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull this turbo off and just set the new one on there so we can get an idea of how much work we have in front of us. And then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming of getting all this wiring finished. And there we have it. She's done. She's mounted up. She's ready to go. Not really at all though. So bolted up with 2 out of 4, and we have a lot of things that we're gonna have to fix. So the first one is obviously the downpipe, but it's really not bad. You know, we got our flex allowing us to move a little bit down here. But if you look at the overall position, it's not much higher or lower than the old one, which is great because I didn't want to necessarily have to jog up or down. I assumed I'd have to go up since the hot side doesn't sit as high. Turns out it's pretty close. So we are gonna have to cut this Marmon flange off, which is specific to the Borg Warner, and then we'll use the V-band that was supplied, and we'll have our transition cone. And then maybe we'll use a pie to get to this straight section here, something like that. I did order a bunch of 3 and 4 inch pies so that we can make life a little easier for ourselves. And then once that's done, moving to our compressor side, you can see it's a lot different. So try to clock it. Oh shit. This is our vibrant tight radius 2.5, and this is going to go, you know, like that. Of course, we're going to have to cut the bottom of the compressor housing off. Basically, most of that silver part will leave. And then this will get welded in place right here. And you can see, because the turbo is small frame, but with a T4 flange, it's pretty close to our runner number 1. We don't have as much width right here to push this compressor over. This is going to have to get cut down probably somewhere in here. I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to rebuild our charge pipe too. And this charge pipe fits awesome, so that's unfortunate. But this is what I have to deal with because I decided to change all this after the fact. Progress update. We've got most of this wrapped up. And on this side, I'm all set up to basically sit here for a few hours and just keep connecting the dots. So we've got our headlight lead zip tied in place so that we can't pull any of our slack out of it or anything like that. And slowly but surely, we'll just match these things up and get them soldered and just crank this shit out. Holy shit. We are finally done with the majority of the wiring. So we got this thing tucking in there. And of course, all this is gonna get loomed, you know, but we gotta test it first. All of our headlight wiring is here. Of course, that'll be loomed as well. We have our factory horns wired, even though they don't bolt up because the intercore's in the way. I'll figure that out. We have our AC pressure switch. Blah, 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 blah. It's all here. All right, well, I think I got everything wrapped up. Fair amount of stuff in front of me, but right now we're just gonna get the dash set back in here. All right, guys, it's been a couple days, and as you can see, the dash is back in. Now, there's no point in filming that because obviously it's pretty boring to watch. But all the stuff that I was concerned about has been sorted out, and I'm actually really, really happy with the overall end result. Starting with the wiring harness, where we relocated it and made it longer, everything fits amazing. The dash is actually bolted in here in the center. I don't know if it's bolted in everywhere, but it's where it's supposed to be. I figured out a great solution to mount the ECU, the relay panel. All of this shit now has a home that's so much better than originally expected. So you'll see I've got all my EMU black wires here and then my stock ECU wires here. And while this is not exactly organized how it's gonna be, it's really close. We did get our blower motor back in, of course. Everything fit fine back there. All of our lower vents aren't obstructed. Our drive-by-wire cable has enough slack in it. Of course, that's gonna be tied up. What I was able to do was actually build a panel that bolts into this glove box area. And you can see I've got 2 rib nuts right here. I've got 2 more on this side, and then I built a panel that drops into place and holds both of our ECUs. More importantly, we have a location for our fuse box. So I'm gonna try to turn this so I don't smack the mic on the windshield. You can see this is gonna sit right in here, and this little relay thing will also be tied to that as well. So what I did is I pulled the airbag, obviously, and then I cut our little tabs off that used to hold the airbag stuff in place. And if you look on the tube, you can see there's rib nuts. I got 3 of them, and that's so I can bolt in another panel that holds this entire assembly. So it's a really trick setup, and it just happened to work out well. And as far as covering it up, this is our airbag lid here, and all I did was clearance the inside. I cut a bunch of shit out of the way, and then this just pops into place. Now I'm not gonna pop it all the way in for sake of having to pop it back out, but it's not hard to get out. You can do it with like a flathead or a plastic blade or whatever. It's not really super strong in there, so if I have to pop it out with a key or whatever in a pinch, I can get under there, and I can check my relays or my fuses if anything pops. Now this wire here is gonna be our EPS power wire. So you can see I have it running across, and the rest will be explained once I put the plate in. So let me show you those. These things took me far too long to build. I basically made the big bracket, and then I made the small tabs to mount the fuse box or the relay box, and then it drops into place. These are our 3 holes that hold it to that dash bar where those rib nuts are. And then here are our ECUs. We have the main one, again, this is for the chassis wiring. So it's stuff like the gauge cluster, the climate control, that kind of shit works. And then this is for our engine management. And you can see we've got these 2 brackets on the side, and they all bolt into place. So this one has to go in first. We have this little distribution junction here, and this is so that we can run our power in from the battery. And then we're gonna go out to, I can't show you now. There's a small lead on that. I'll show you that in a second. And then this one up top is gonna go out to this circuit breaker. Now this is a placeholder. We're gonna run a 60 amp breaker here, not the 200 that this one is. And it's gonna go from here to our EPS. And that way, if we ever have any problems with the EPS, it's protected. 0 gauge all the way to here, and then 8 gauge from here to our breaker and out to our electric motor. All right, here's a rough idea of what it's gonna look like when it's done. We have our little splitter there, so you can see power wire comes in, and that big gauge wire runs down through the back here, and then down, and then underneath this, and all the way back to our battery. And then on our battery side, that 200 amp breaker that's up there as mock-up is actually gonna go back here. We have our power lead right here. That's, you know, from the previous owner. And we're gonna mount a panel back here that's got all of our breakers on it, or 2 of our breakers on it. We're gonna have one that goes to the battery and one that goes to the fuel pumps. And then we have this from Leash Electronics, fused relay setup. So I don't really need the breaker, but I'm gonna run it just to be safe. We'll have a 60 amp breaker in line that feeds each one of these pumps, and our triggers from the ECU. One pump will be on all the time, the other pump will be TPS based. With that top section pretty much done, it's as far as I want to go before the other breaker comes in, we can move down to the ECU section. And there it is, ready to go. Now, you might ask, what about your glove box? Space-wise, I have nothing, but I cut pretty much all of it up just to make it clear. This thing just goes up and shuts just like that, and voila. Can't even tell this thing's got a standalone in it. Now, we can move on momentarily while we wait for that 60 amp breaker for the EPS. I really want to jump around over to here and start doing some fab stuff, but realistically, it would be much smarter to just focus on the wiring like I have been and get this shit knocked out. So that's what we gotta do. So we gotta do things like our auxiliary harness to our fuel pumps, our fan wiring to our fans, our main power off the bat. Since we haven't mounted that breaker yet, we gotta do that. And then we gotta set this up like I just said. And we're not using this anymore, but we have it around. So we got wire, we got everything we need. So we just gotta bang that stuff out. All right, we got a little interim update here. I put a 4-channel amp in. It's not mounted how I want it, but it's in here. Got some cables ran, it's pretty sick. Got 2 crossovers over there. I could not fit them in the doors. I put it back here because it was driving me nuts trying to find a place. Again, also not completely organized, just close. Over there, we got our breakers, and then above that, we have our fuel pump relays, and we got power going to it, and then split off since it's a ground triggered setup. We need to bring back the ECU ground trigger for both pumps. Now, the cool part is the audio system. The inside is almost completely done. As you can see, I got my console back in. Door panels, they were off at some point, and I had to put these tweeters right here because they wouldn't fit in the OEM spot. I do think they came out pretty nice. Cluster's back in, we got this thing in place. So now, we're back to the engine bay, and we're doing turbo fabrication stuff. So I got a 2.5 inch charge pipe kit. I started with this. I did tap this out with a -6 to quarter MPT, and then it's just sitting in there for now with a -6 straight on it. We're gonna figure out how to plumb the water to and from the turbo. I got a weld a -6 up here. Lots of stuff. Little update, couple hours in, we got our hot pipe completely done. It's all tied together, ready to be welded out entirely. Came out pretty nice. The intake is sick. I got this 4-inch piece of carbon right here, a carbon 45. It's just like the old setup, except now we have way more space for it. So give you an idea what it's gonna look like. Unfortunately, we had to cut the tube down quite a bit to make it fit. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this pipe out and put all the final welding off into the end, and we're gonna go ahead and mock up our downpipe. Jumping right into the next update, we now have a completed downpipe. And again, it's just tacked. I gotta finish weld it. And I think it looks pretty sick from this angle, but when you get over here, I don't love it. You can probably obviously tell why. I had to do 2 3-inch pie cuts here to get this angle close enough to what we had already. Now what I wanted to do was run this cone straight out and then run 4-inch pies over here. But the problem was it got it so close to the valve cover, I'd have to cut this 90 off here, which is a lot more work to get down here, you know, once we start getting into the middle of the run there. We're gonna go ahead and run it, it's fully tacked, and it feels good to finally have the hot parts and the cold parts kind of connected, you know? Clocking back in with the camera, we got the downpipe done. Came out pretty sick. About to heat wrap it. Got the exhaust housing sitting in place. The compressor cover has just been washed out with water. Welds came out nice on this guy. The downpipe process is underway as far as heat wrap goes. This sucks. I didn't think about how hard it would be to wrap a transition, and I've tried it 3 times, and there might be a great way to do it, but if there is, I can't figure it out. So let's get this downpipe installed. Pray that it still fits after getting it hot, and then we can put our center section in, and we can work on our oil drain. Also, I forgot to show you this. I welded this up last night. It came out pretty good. Basically just a -6 on the bottom of this water pipe inlet here, or outlet rather, radiator outlet to the radiator, engine outlet. And it should look pretty clean. I think I have it figured out as far as how our lines are gonna go, so I'll show you that here in a bit. Coming in hot with another update. We got most of our stuff permanently installed. Now we got the charge pipe in, we got our T-bolt clamps tight, got our vacuum line run to the boost control solenoid down here. Oil drain came out nice, hit it with some black ceramic paint. I left the drain loose because we want to prime the turbo, make sure we got oil coming out of that thing when we get this thing cranking. Water lines are installed, they look pretty good. Downpipe is on but not connected at the bottom. I got to get the car up in the air. I bent that heater core line over towards the driver's side a little bit. Overall, it looks pretty sick. Happy with everything. Intake looks dope, but I just took it back off because I need to work on our fan relay setup. So we got this right here from Leach Electronics. It's a single relay because we're running a single fan, and it's going to mount just like this right here, and then it's going to go right to the alternator. Now, I forgot to put sleeving on this. I don't know what I was thinking, so I might remake this wire with some black braided sleeving just so it doesn't stand out like such an eyesore, because that looks pretty crazy. It does match the sway bar, but That's gay. Intermittent update number, I have no idea at this point. I rebuilt the downpipe again. We have really good heater hose clearance on this side, or at least pretty decent. Firewall clearance is about the same as it was before. And I haven't checked the wastegate yet, but given the spot that it's in, it should be okay. So that's all I got for right now. Be back soon. Hopping right back into a wiring update. I went ahead and added these two connectors. This is for all the aux wiring, like the fuel pumps and the fan. And this right here goes to our stock ECU for our TAC and our check engine line. And then up here, you can see we got a red power wire coming off, and that runs across there, down and over. This is very difficult to run. And that is for our starting / charging harness. It goes to our starter, and then I'll pair the daisy chain to the alternator. Now I also got all this stuff loomed up. It came out really nice. I used the split braid stuff. You can see it looks pretty good. Things like the back of the headlight came out really nice. Engine bay is still quite dusty. The new downpipe is looking dialed, all heat wrapped and clean. There's not much left to do under here except for installing some hoses, tightening some stuff up. We've got an upper rad hose here. We got our oil drain line loose because we want to prime the motor with fresh oil, and I want to see it drip out of that before I hook it up to the pan. Our fan wiring came out nice. It's mounted right here. It comes off and goes to the side of the alternator there. You can see this wire, or this lead, goes underneath the oil pan and to our starter, which is underneath the intake manifold. And then that power wire comes up and runs right inside here. Moving over here, not much has changed. We still got to put our gas pedal back in, and then I wired the pumps. So the fuel pumps, there's two pumps. One will be on all the time, one will be on based on throttle position. You can see we opted for 14 gauge wires. We have two fuel pump wires here. This is pump 1 with the blue tape, and then pump 2. We've got our grounds, our fuel level sending unit wiring here. Back here we have our nice little fuel pump relay set up from Leash Electronics. You can see again with the blue tape denoting pump 1. It is confusing when you run all these wires. It's easy to forget where you're at. So we got those there with the trigger wires right there coming through that go all the way up to the ECU. And our breakers, you've seen those. So everything is coming along pretty damn well. I'm gonna go ahead and finish these fuel pump wires, and we should be ready to prime this thing. The time to fire this thing up has finally come. At least we're really close. But I gotta take the fuel lines off and make sure I purge out all the shit from like when I cut them with the angle grinder, stuff like that. While I have the car on the ground before I raise it up, I went ahead and filled it with oil. And we also have to prime our turbos. All right, fast forward. Now we got Tanny over here. I'm gonna just drain this oil right into this trash can. He brought this with him. This is his trash can. Thank you.
I'm trash can. Fucking hippity hop, dude. Yeah, we're going for crank sequence 1. Yeah, keep going. It'll only gain pressure there, like towards the end. Alright, that's it.
Got a nice oil flow?
Yeah, we got some good flow here right into our can.
I think we checked all the boxes, went through all this shit. Give the first start a go, see what happens.
Here, let me make sure the camera can see here. That's perfect, I think.
Alright, good to go?
Yep.
Really quiet.
Yeah, real quiet. Sounds nice, man.
It fucking started right up.
Sure did, dude. It didn't even turn over like fucking twice. Yeah, that is moving.
Is it?
That pulley is moving.
The DVT pulley?
Yeah. No, this one.
Oh, the shit one?
And the belt's moving too, so it's something else. Yeah. I hear a vacuum leak bad somewhere.
Yeah,
something somewhere. Oh my god!
Oh, that's the only reason it was even running.
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, that's insane that
That's a through
cable mount.
That's a through hole.
It's not supposed to be.
So it's like sucking air in through the throttle cable.
The whole time I was running, I was like, something's
I put
leaking.
my hand over and plugged the leak and installed the car.
Well, she runs.